Okay, the time being 10:04.
We can do
Let's
this
get
afterwards.
started. Yeah, we'll do that after. First, I want to make a couple of announcements. As you can tell by the schedule, we have 3 work sessions scheduled. However, we'll only be discussing SB 291 today. SB 249 and SB 83 will both be postponed to a later date, at least 2 weeks from today. So they won't be next week and possibly 2 weeks from today, but that has not been set in stone yet. So that will be forthcoming. But I did want to let those in the audience know that if you're waiting for 249 or 83, they will not be coming up because they are postponed. And if any of you have any information that you are hoping to get to the committee, please email the committee. Thank you very much. Let's see.
Hey. Wow. That cleared the room. What, nobody likes us?
That's it. Go.
Don't take it personally, Jordan.
Yes, Representative Opal.
I was just going to ask, you indicated that these are postponed for at least 2 weeks. Is the
Yeah.
chair's intention to have a meeting next week?
So my intention is to have no meeting next week.
Okay.
And my understanding is there will not be a House meeting as far as a session, House session next week either. So, so that way, and we still have, there still would be 2 more weeks left that we can get stuff done. We will be down to, at most, 4 bills because we got 1 new bill that we'll have to have a public hearing on, regarding some fee increases, and of course, SB 83, SB 249, and the one we're talking about today, SB 291. Representative Almy.
Thank you. I think the 22nd is the last day we have to get the bills out.
That's what I think I may have said that last week. Or actually, maybe 2 weeks ago because I wasn't here last week. And that is apparently not true. The 22nd, I misunderstood. The 22nd is, and this brings me to another announcement. If you have, the speaker's really loud today. If you have items in the drawers here, please take them out. They all need to be out by the 22nd. And then if you have a locker, the lockers need to be cleaned out also by the 22nd. Let's see what other announcements I have. I guess the only other announcement would be those of you who have signed up. Tomorrow we have the, at 11 a.m., the field trip to the Nash in Nashua. And is there anyone who hasn't signed up who wants to go at this point? Because I think we have a list of about 10 of us on this committee and 2 others. Yes, Representative Schoenberg.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, you'd like to be Mr. Speaker. Okay.
I don't know about that.
Oh, I don't know. He's pretty, all right. Concerning the mileage, I did go by the Speaker's office, and I think he's going to send you a sheet that you'll take there and we will sign when we get there. That's what I was told by the secretary.
Well, okay. If that, I'm not sure. If that doesn't happen, then in the speaker's office, there are sheets that you can.
She wouldn't take it. She would not let me sign up on that because they're afraid some of us that would sign up wouldn't go.
Yeah.
Oh, but you haven't, it has to be done after. That's the only reason. Yeah. So if there's not a sign up sheet for mileage, then yeah, you'll go to the speaker's office and get that form.
And just
Go ahead.
previously what has happened with, no.
Mic- Microphone,
Have to close.
microphone.
Previously what has happened, what you do is you put down, where it was from home to Nashua, so they know to use the, Department of Transportation mileage table to pay correctly. So I'm gonna get a cut and pay, cause it's 2 miles for me.
Yeah, these forms, I mean, obviously, yeah, obviously don't go to a kiosk and sign in if you happen to be in the Concord area. This form will say, you know, from your home to where, and you'll have to fill that in. So. Okay. If you walk,
No.
if you walk, you don't get mileage.
Besides, the sidewalk over the bridge.
It's true. Yeah, it's good for your personal health.
However, there is a Jersey
Okay.
Mike's on the way.
All right. So does anyone have any questions about the announcements? If not, we will get started and I'll open the work session on SB 291. And if anyone doesn't have any, well, let me first say that on your desk, I distributed an amendment. It's Amendment 2025-1925H. And while I wasn't here last week, I did watch the public hearing. And keeping in mind that the last two bills on this topic have not made it through the House, and this one seemed to have a lot of consternation during the public hearing, what I decided to do is offer an amendment to greatly simplify this and try to really get to the heart of what the immediate concern. And I know there's other concerns and there may be other legislation that makes sense to have later. But what I tried to look at is in today's world, there are more and more pastors who would prefer to start growing equity in their own home or live in a different home. And the way the law works now is if the pastor lives in the parsonage, then there's no real estate tax on it. But now that we're seeing this shift towards pastors living in their own home, and they pay taxes on their own home, they don't get any special disposition there. But churches are still paying housing allowances. What I did was take the current law that you see before you and add in boldface one line, basically that's saying the church can rent that parsonage out for the purpose of applying the net income, because there's expenses, repairs or whatever, insurance, apply the net income to the pastor's housing allowance. And so in this way, I was hoping to completely simplify and get to the heart of the issue, because, that's seems to be the greatest concern. So anyways, I'll leave it at that and see how people feel. Representative Schamberg, you had your mic on first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say that when you introduced House Bill 585, I thought that's originally what was going to be. And then when 291 came in, I'm going, whoa, wait a minute, because I saw your name on that one also. And now you've gone back to this, and I really think this goes right back to where you expressed in the beginning what you would like to see done because of the situation with your church and what Representative Opal talked about, a situation that occurred with the parsonage up there. So I can support this approach right here.
Thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that also brings up the fact of my initial bill, 585. This is a further simplification of that bill as well, because that bill also allowed the rental of the main church building and the parsonage, and those funds could be used for church operations. This is very specific to the fact of the parsonage and the rental money they're using for the pastor's housing allowance. So this is a very simplification beyond beyond that as well. Representative Opal, I think you were next.
Um, I agree, Mr. Chairman, with Representative Schamberg. I would have preferred retaining this bill, because I do think there were some interesting questions worth exploring, but we can explore that in another way. I do have one concern about this, and I know you're taking language from existing law, but I'm wondering whether this in any way potentially excludes non-Christian denominations from, in describing it as church parsonages leased for the purpose of, I honestly don't know what a Jewish temple might do, what a Hindu temple might do, what a mosque might do, and whether this unintentionally, I think, discriminates against those denominations and not other non-Christian denominations. And I don't know whether there's, law definitions about church parsonages that are broader and that would alleviate that concern.
Okay, I'll answer that, but I'll let Representative Ulrich go first.
Yeah, I don't think it does. In the first place, most rabbis are employed. They're not solely employed by their particular congregation. Hindu temples, the same thing applies for their priests. Their monks are set up in very similar to the monastic tradition in the West, with their Shinto or Hindu or Buddhist temples. So I don't, and church in Western law originally applied to Christian churches, but has been adapted to mean places of worship. If you want to change church to place of worship or facility of worship, but you're adding verbiage you don't need as far as I'm concerned.
Well, okay, yeah, let me just answer it and then I'll let you go. So my answer to that would be, one of the reasons I placed it right here, because the previous bill I brought, added to the section and all that. The reason I don't think it discriminates is because it's in that same, it's talking about church parsonages occupied by their pastors already being tax exempt from real estate tax.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just saying, or church parsonage. So in other words, it's not like this all-encompassing piece outside of this statement. I was trying to, it's almost like parenthetical around that one spot. So I think that's why it doesn't discriminate. If there's additional things, and one of the, because this is the problem that was brought forth at this point. And so it's trying to solve just that. It's in that one spot. And I think, next year, if people see fit to bring forth additional legislation that, enhances in some other way, I think that's perfectly fine and we should discuss it. But I don't think this discriminates.
If I,
Sure.
I'm not a lawyer, thank God.
Should I get to go before he goes to it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Thank you. I think it's a good amendment. I support it. I think it does clarify. As far as I think we could go around on this for years. I just think there's so much, no matter how we word it, there are going to be these gray examples around the state. So I think this does move us forward. And I agree, if someone has something really clear down the road, we can add that. But I think there's always going to be some gray, no matter what bill goes through. Because it's complicated.
It is.
And every
It is.
community is different.
Right. And thank you. And that's why my initial bill, even though I know this is a super simplification from that, I realized that even in that bill, which was simpler, and by the way, the reason my name is on the current one with the 6 units and all that is because it got amended. When I put my name on the bill, it didn't talk about 6 units and all that. So I don't necessarily, subscribe to that, but thank you. Representative Opal.
Yeah, that other body just does all sorts of wonderful things. No, my only, since this is a work session, I'm just wondering, I appreciate the narrowness of this amendment and the intent, and I'm willing to support it, happy to support it. In fact, I just have that one nagging doubt, and I appreciate what Representative Ullery said, and I assume that that is correct. But I'm wondering if we might ask a legal authority just to say yes, this language is fine, or you should change it to parsonages for houses of worship or something like that.
Yeah, I guess my answer to that would be that, and there's nothing wrong with asking that, but we have not heard any testimony of concern from other religious groups. And this is the third bill now, one in the Senate, two in the House. So I think this being narrow to this degree, I think we're okay. But that's my opinion.
The U.S. tax code says that it uses the word ministers in all their definitions. So what's that? But I think they're saying it's taking in what you're worried, or broad enough scope that what a minister might be. So, but the U.S. tax code does say just ministers.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we've had this, yeah, and this has been, I don't know how long this has been around, but it's been around a long time as pastor. Representative, can't see, Elberger.
Thank you. I will not support and ought to pass on this. I would like to support a retain bill. I still believe that there are enough questions in here for me that I think it's not urgent. There's nothing urgent about this bill. We can retain it, get some more questions answered, and anyway, that's where I am at this point. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Representative Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question. I support the amendment, but the tail end of line 7 through 8 and 9. Who does that? What entity?
Okay, keep in mind that, well, let me look at it. Keep in mind that everything is current law except
I
for
know,
boldface.
but
Yeah.
who does it? When I was growing up as a kid, we had a group
Regularly
that all of us called Moonies that came into town, and they built themselves a huge church, and the pastor got driven around by a chauffeur in a Rolls Royce. He didn't get much of a salary, but that's okay. The church paid for every single thing he wanted. A trip here, a trip there, buy groceries. He didn't need much money. The rest was pocket money. That was accepted in Connecticut, which are a bunch of nutcases, as a legally constituted and recognized religion. Maybe by the 600 or 800 people that belong to the church, but not to anybody else.
So your question is who's policing what?
Who's saying that they're a regularly organized, constituted denomination, creed, or sect, incorporated or legally doing business in the state? Who says that?
Representative Elmy might be able to answer that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's any other, but the IRS says that. To come closer to home, Grafton Town was fighting for quite a while with a gentleman who came in and bought one of their houses and then declared it a church of one. And it's the IRS that comes in and says, according to all of the research we've got, you ain't a church. And I think the Loonies probably would have qualified as a church.
Moonies.
Moonies.
Loonies are Canadians.
Sorry, I misheard.
You were much closer on your wordage.
Yeah.
Moonies are loonies.
Let me ask you
Not
this:
in
are the
the
Moonies
Canadian
still in
sense.
operation? Down in Connecticut? Yeah. Okay. Representative Orrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the issue, is a case of state versus religion. I'm wondering, did Representative Almy, did you find out whether or not the housing trust you talked about, if they were being properly given tax exemptions or not? You had brought that up, but you weren't sure what the answer was. So I'm curious about that. I'm not done yet. And then in Ware, New Hampshire, we have a situation where it's a home church. The gentleman's name is Howard Kalugian. And the town has come in and told them they can't have church Bible studies or singing in their home and this kind of thing. I mean, this is obviously a government overreach. And I just went to their house on Saturday to talk to him. And apparently the Department of Justice is now getting involved in this, and they are suing, I believe, the town of Ware, because New Hampshire seems to have a problem with trying to zone churches out of business or tax them out of existence. We saw that last year with Representative Cephalitis, I believe her name is, came in here wanting to basically tax the churches out of existence. You know, she talked about the bully pulpit and the thumb being on the oppressed people. What she forgot was a lot of churches fly the gay pride flag. And as I said a week ago, I really don't give a rat's what they're doing, as long as they're taking care of the poor and the people in need. And when I read this amendment, which I thought was actually pretty well written, I hate to give you credit for it, John, but you know, it says here, religious purpose by any regularly recognized and constituted denomination, creed, sect, organized, incorporated, legally doing business in the state. I mean, I don't see how much more clear it could be. And, you know, we're trying to let these churches reach out to the poor, you know, provide housing for those that are in need, addicted, whatever, soup kitchens. Like I said, the little church in Chichester, which I am not a member of, but I know they feed the kids in our schools. So why do we want to push them out? I don't see why this is such a big deal. I mean, to me, it seems like a no-brainer. And if it wasn't, I mean, this says any regularly recognized constituted denomination. I mean, why wouldn't we vote for this?
So just to be clear, that is current law now. The only thing that I've added is the boldface type.
I got that.
in there.
Yep.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, that's
Yeah.
what we're trying to do. We're just, you know, these churches are trying to help people. There's nothing, you know, that's under the table or, you know, nothing dark going on here. This has been going on for centuries. I'm sure people have heard of Mother Teresa, who gave her whole life to taking care of the class in India. And if you don't think that still exists, when we had our .com in New Jersey, we had an Indian lady come in, we hired, and she refused to work with the other Indian lady because of her last name. Her last name tells them what class they are, what town or city they're from. I mean, this is simple, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want me to answer the very first part?
Sure.
I have not yet managed to get my assessor. He's only available on Tuesdays in Lebanon. And I did send him a message and I haven't gotten an answer yet. But what we were doing on this before he arrived, we've had different assessors over time. And this is a municipal issue. That's why in New Hampshire, and that's why you've got some places like Ware and other places that don't do that. But we haven't had a problem of that kind. The parsonages get, I think the Catholic Church, which does have a parsonage, the others don't.
Some of the Lutheran churches,
Use your microphone, please.
yeah, parsonage is a general term.
Yeah.
Congregational Church is, I believe, the one that started with that, which was tax sponsored in New Hampshire for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we're not taxing those. And what we are doing is that we're not providing any support equivalent, because they do have other ways of doing this. The Jewish community, which is fairly large, the Buddhist community, which is across in Vermont, but our people go to because they don't have a structure and such. But I'm perfectly willing to go along with this amendment the way it is.
Thank you. Representative Elberger.
I'm wondering, this may already be part of law, I just don't know. I'm wondering how, what kind of guardrails there would be under this amendment, so that the rent that the church would be charging would not exceed the cost of the housing allowance plus the additional point of insurance and maintenance and upkeep of the building.
I mean, thinking about my own example, it's going to end up being probably most likely the housing allowance is going to be less than what the pastor is actually paying, because it's rent minus expenses, and it's basically a house, yeah, I mean, you can find any part of any law that could be subject to needing scrutiny, and if it's up to, I mean, how does anything get discovered? I mean, when Representative Almy was talking about the IRS eventually figuring out that something's not really a religious institution, then it's taken care of in that way. In this situation, it could be someone who knows that something's not correct and maybe going to their town assessor. I think this is, I mean, unless you can give an example where you think that this would be off the rails, it seems pretty straightforward.
Well, an example, and I'm making this up, this is not based on anything
Okay.
that I've heard about, but let's assume that a housing allowance for a member of the clergy would be $25,000 a year. I'm just playing with numbers here. If the rent that is being assessed to whoever, whether it's a choir director or whoever else might be in the parish house, is $50,000 a year, that would seem excessive, because only half of that is the amount that's being provided as a housing allowance, and $25,000 for insurance or maintenance or whatever seems a little much.
Okay, well, I would agree with your example, except that the issue would be to make 50,000 off one unit of housing would be pretty remarkable.
I deliberately chose a ridiculous number.
And so, being in the rental business myself, I know that would be tough. And we still pay insurance costs, maintenance, repairs. By the time you get to, I can almost guarantee it's not going to be 50,000. Whatever that top line number is, minus those expenses, you're at about, and as I said, in the case of my church, I know that based on our current situation, we'll actually be giving the housing allowance would actually be smaller than, what they probably need for their house. So I understand your concern. I don't think you're going to see a major, difference there. Representative Opal.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I just looked up a document from the IRS, and my concern is alleviated. So, you know,
Okay.
the definition of church is pretty broad. So-
Okay, thank you. Representative Almy.
Yeah, it looks to me like the wording of that you used is least for the purpose of applying the net income to the pastor's housing allowance.
Right.
So I don't really see a problem with that.
Okay. I'm leaning towards potentially executing this, but I want to take a straw poll first, just to see, by a show of hands, how many people could support the, and keep in mind, this amendment, it replaces the full bill as it is. This is, so with a show of hands, who could support this? Oh, okay. That's, are there any other remarks to be made? If not, I think, we'll move to an exec session on this. All right, I'm going to close the work session on SB 291. And I'll give the clerk a couple minutes to get composed.
Wipe the blood off my face.
While we're waiting, does anyone know what a jar of mayonnaise inside of a sink stands for?
Never heard of that.
Cinco de Mayo.
Representative O'Leary, could you take that on the road?
I think he's a budding comedian, for sure.
Wow. Giving credit where credit's due. That's James Splain did that the other day, and it's funny as hell. Oh well. You realize, of course, that the 5th of May is not Mexican Independence Day. That's in September. Or
Yes.
all this was the first of two battles. The first one they won, the second one they lost big time against French Lancers.
Oh, maybe three. Oh, maybe it's three. No, yeah, 4. So Smith is out.
France was supporting the
And,
second emperor,
Oh, you got him. Okay.
Maximilian, who was a
You got
Habsburg.
Cole.
This was the second empire of France and the second empire of Mexico. Because Mexico
Oh,
owed
Ford, you
France
don't
so
have
much
Ford.
money.
Am I
And
pointing to
they
the right
said,
one?
we're not gonna pay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you are.
Cole, Smith. Oh, the other Smith, Jeffrey Smith.
Oh, the free colonial.
Okay.
And that was
right.
a bunch of different.
Who's gonna? Who's gonna? Okay. I am going to open an executive session on SB 291 and recognize Representative Ullery for a motion. Microphone.
I move amendment.
No, you ought to pass on the bill.
I move out to pass on the bill.
SB 291.
Yeah, SB
Do I
291.
have, do I have a second? Second from Representative Almy.
I'd like to speak to
speak-
my motion.
Yeah.
I would like to offer amendment 1925H by Representative Janagian, modifying or clarifying the application of net income from to a housing allowance on the rental of a parish house or house of worship parsonage.
And this amendment completely replaces SB 291, correct?
Yes, it does.
Just
I'll
want to make
second
sure
that
that that's out there.
I'm sorry, I'll second that. motion.
Second from Representative Schamberg.
Voice vote.
All right. Any further talk on the amendment, or we
No, you can go
Okay.
ahead and vote on the amendment.
okay?
You
Does
have my
anyone,
permission.
does anyone have anything else to say on the amendment before we go to the vote? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk. Seeing one, Representative Tierney.
Point of clarification, it replaces only sections 1 and 2. Section 3 of the original bill still stands,
And
which is the date of implementation.
yes, that's
So it
Thanks.
doesn't replace the whole thing.
okay. Yeah,
Replacing section 1.
and two. Yeah. Yeah.
Where's section 2?
Thank you for that point. In fact, when I submitted this amendment, I had put the same date as was in, and when I got it, I said, "Oh, they missed that." But then I realized it's okay; it's still there. So it does replace the complete bill, except the implementation date, which is July, I think, 1st of 2025. All right, I will.
Yeah.
I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The motion is ought to pass on Amendment 2025-1925H. Representative Ulrey.
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Sodi.
Yes.
Representative Ors.
Yes.
Representative Smith is absent. Representative Tierney.
Yes.
Representative Cole is absent. Representative Breyer.
Yes.
Representative Maryford is absent. Representative Mary Murphy.
Yes.
Representative Almy.
Yes.
Representative Southworth.
Yes.
Representative Malloy.
Yes.
Representative Schomburg.
Yes.
Representative Bolton.
Yes.
Representative Elberger.
No.
Representative Jeffrey Smith is absent. Representative Opal.
Aye.
Representative Spar.
Yes.
Chairman Janigian.
Yes.
I count 15 to 1.
15-1. Okay, the vote being 15-1. Representative Elberger, do you have an objection to consent?
Yeah,
What's that?
we just voted.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's continue now. Okay, so the amendment passes, the vote being 15-1. We'll now move on to ought to pass as amended. Any comments on that before we take that vote? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on OTPA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The motion is ought to pass on House Bill 291 as amended relative to the religious use of land property tax exemption. Representative Ulrey.
Aye.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Sodi.
Yes.
Representative Ors.
Yes.
Representative Tierney.
Yes.
Representative Breyer.
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
Representative Almy.
Yes.
Representative Southworth.
Yes.
Representative Malloy.
Yes.
Representative Schomburg.
Yes.
Representative Bolton.
Yes.
Representative Elberger.
No.
Representative Opal.
Aye.
Representative Spar. Yes. Chairman Janigian.
Yes.
15-1.
The vote being 15-1, is there any objection to consent? Representative Elberger? Okay. No objection to consent. This will go on the consent calendar. And Representative Ulrey, you get to write the majority report. Yes. I'm going to close the executive session on SB 291. So that pretty much wraps it up for today, given that, and I'll just make the announcement again in case those in the public didn't hear it, but SB 249 and SB 83 will be postponed and not talked about today and scheduled for a future date, which will most likely not be next week. We won't meet next week. So earliest it could happen is 2 weeks from now. And I anticipate we'll also have the public hearing on the one new bill we have, which is what? SB 110. We'll have a public hearing on that. Again, make sure your lockers are cleaned out by either today or September 22nd. And the draws over here should be cleaned out also by September 22nd.
May 22nd,
Why, what did I say?
September.
Did I say September? Okay. May 22nd.
I'm not the only one.
May 22nd. I think I was thinking next time we meet could be in September to go over the retained bills. I'm sorry, not next time, but when we finish this, these bills, the next time we'll meet would be in September. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Thank you. And I'll see those of you who are going to the Nash tomorrow at 11 o'clock,
At the Nash parking lot.
Nash parking lot.
Since the Nash was published in the catalog, attendance will be taken. Not that it means anything.